Good morning. I am John. Welcome to Prepper Nation. Tracy Alderman, thank you very much for sponsoring the coffee this morning. Truly appreciate that, ma'am. So, Trump's words will ultimately lead to war here in the United States of America. That's what I want to talk about this morning, if that's okay. Um, I need to put a pin in that, throw a little asterisk on there, though, because their conditions apply, and we're going to get into those conditions and what exactly am I talking about. We're going to get into that. So, for those that don't know, a few days ago Trump made a controversial statement when it came to abortion, right? So his stance is starting to change on abortion somewhat. This has angered a lot of conservatives because he's been, up to this point, he's been totally pro life and totally against abortion. And he seemed to soften his stance. Um, and the other day he said, and this is a direct quote, it's about the will of the people. And then he goes on to explain, states' rights. This should be up to each individual state. This is not something that should be mandated by the federal government, right? So, in other words, the things that Californians want should not apply to to the people that live in North Carolina. And the people, whatever we want in North Carolina, that should not apply to folks that live in California. You get what I'm saying? States' rights versus federal rights. Many of you know what I'm talking about, some may not, but this led to a lot of angry conservatives. A lot of diehard conservatives are really upset with Trump for saying this, because again, they feel like he is softening his stance. So my first question is, before we move forward, and I get it, I'm pro-life myself. I understand the frustration when it comes to these statements, but which lane are you in as a conservative? Because I hear a bunch of different things from conservatives in the community and throughout. On one hand, they don't want the federal government telling us how to live, and I'm with that camp. I don't want to be told how to live. I don't want to be told what kind of car that I have to buy. I don't want to be told that I can't eat but trace amounts of meat each month and that I have to do this. That's not freedom to me. And I don't think this should be dictated by the federal government. But on the other hand, when it comes to certain things, conservatives are like, well, the federal government needs to step in and do something. You know what I mean? Like they need to get in there. They want school choice. They don't like, and I'm with you on that. They don't want the federal government's propaganda rolling down from DC and infecting all the 50 states in the public schools. But then on the flip side, when it comes to abortion, they want the federal government to step in and for it to immediately apply to all 50 states. And I get it. Again, as pro-life, I get it, I understand, but I'm saying you can't have it both ways. I can't have it both ways. None of us can. So we're really getting into states' rights versus federal rights, a place that we've been before as a country. Let me know in chat real quick, or replay crowd. Are you about states' rights, or are you about federal rights? Do you think the federal government has, the power to dictate how we live? Or do you think, as a citizen of a certain state, it should come from the state representation? Because again, we can't have both. Somebody's got to be in charge. You know what I'm saying? I'll liken it to two parents. Look, son, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I call Miss Nation the warden because she runs things around here. I pick on her and I call her the warden, but you have to have that one person in charge, because otherwise I'm buying books all the time and I'm spending recklessly and I'm buying stuff for prepping that we don't need. I'm buying this up here, retro games. She's like, put the brakes on it. We got other stuff we got to buy right now. So somebody has to be in charge. Should that be the federal government? One size fits all and it trickles down to all 50 states? Or should that be the state government as determined by the citizens of that state? Which one do you believe we should see? Either way, what Trump is doing with this statement, I believe, and the reason this is so important moving forward is he's laying down his blueprint for a second term. All right. Um, I think he wants to push the idea of states' rights, and quite frankly, I'm glad to see it. Remember our conversation that we had months and months and months ago? I don't even know how many months ago. We were talking about the Convention of States, and I can remember, I'm paraphrasing here, but I can remember telling y'all at that time, I thought at one point in time, I thought Trump was that guy. And I said, I guess not. We need that central figure, that leader to kind of carry the flag if we're going to have a convention of states. You can have jabrones here on YouTube, myself included, calling for a convention of states, and it really means nothing. But when you have governors getting together and calling for a convention of states, when you have, a former president or, should he be reelected, a sitting president, at this point, it holds a lot of weight and people then are paying attention. It kind of, the bigger the spotlight, the more people tend to come. You know what I'm saying? So we really need that central figure. And I knew that a long time ago. Um, but the fact is, and this is opinion on my part, tell me if you agree with me. The federal government is way too big. It's way too bloated. It's way too powerful. In my opinion, this is where a lot of the reckless spending comes from. We've got so many little cliques and so many departments that we don't need. I'm a firm believer that if you are a taxpayer, I don't know which politician said this actually. I remember one of them did. You should be able to do it your taxes on one sheet of paper. You shouldn't have to hire somebody and pay hundreds of dollars or more, and there be 50 or 60 pages. You should be able to do it on a single sheet of paper. And that's just the IRS. I mean, I'm not just picking on them. There are a lot of agencies within the government that are bloated. If I'm being honest. And look, when you get into the federal government, as many of you have pointed out, and I agree with this, we really have no representation anyway. Congress is Congress in name only. 95, I don't know what the actual number is, forgive me, but 90 or 95% of the people in Congress, both sides, they ain't working for people like us. You know what I mean? There's a reason somebody goes in there, they're making whatever they make. It's not a lot of money, and 5 years later, they're worth $80 million. They're getting money in a back room somewhere to vote a certain way. They don't work for the American people. This is another reason that I don't like the federal government being so powerful. Um, there are really two roads to go from here, based on this statement that Donald Trump laid out. Because again, think what you will on Donald Trump. Yeah, he put out some mean tweets, and he does say some silly things sometimes, but he's not an ignorant man. He knows what he's saying, and he knows how to manipulate conversations and things. He knows how to get free coverage in the media. He's always been good at this, but states' rights is what he's going to be pushing. So they're really two paths. We know where the massive federal government path ends because we're literally there right now. We have a massive federal government that is hemorrhaging money that we don't have, and we're being dictated to everything through our walk of life. Get rid of the lawnmowers, get rid of the wood stoves, eat the fake food. All of this stuff is being dictated to us by the federal government. We also know where the states' right, the road with states' rights. We know where that ends because we've been down that road once before. It ends in civil war. Just saying. Give you a couple of examples. California wants mass illegals. So if you're a federal government person, if you're pro federal government, bloated federal government, what that means is because California wants it, now all 50 states have to comply. But if you're a states' rights person, California wants to make mass illegals okay, good, flood the state, right? But at the same time, Texas has a right to disagree with that, and they have a right to defend you know, to defend Texans from this surge of illegals. Keep them in California. If that's how you want to roll, that's how you want to roll. You know, sometimes things should not apply to all 50 states. Oregon wants to push 100% electric vehicles. They don't want any kind of gasoline engines in Oregon whatsoever. We already know these things cost astronomical amounts. We already know what the battery replacement looks like. We already know that the grid is frail and it cannot sustain it. It's lunacy. We see this every time we have a cold streak or snowstorm or something like this. If Oregon wants to do that, let Oregon do that. Let the people of Oregon decide, right? That does not mean Florida has to play along. Florida has the right to do things totally different if they choose to do so. That's the argument for state rights. But people in power, what do we know? They're not just going to give it away. Think about that. This is why it's going to lead to civil war, I think, once again. Think about the weef. What is the weef all about at the end of the day? You really think it's there to help the world economics? No, of course not. It's a consolidation of power, right? We've talked about this on the channel time and again. They want a North American Union. They want to do away with Mexico, Canada, and the United States, turn the entire continent into one deal because it's easier to control that way. And then the WEF wants to dictate down from Switzerland how we're going to live. Okay. Um, States' rights is the total opposite. It's about taking that consolidated power, breaking it up 50 times over, and handing that power back to the individual people within each state. For me, you have actual representation uh, that we're not getting in Congress. That's my personal opinion. And that is why I think it's going to ultimately lead to war. That's why I think Trump's words are laying the groundwork for the war to come. Trump, here's Trump when it comes to abortion. I think, again, not a dummy. He's a smart man. He's figured out, when it comes to certain topics like abortion, it's too controversial and it's a no-win situation. Meaning, you're not ever going to be able to convince all of the people on both sides this is better than this or vice versa. You're never gonna please everybody. So no matter where you stand on it as a politician, half of the country is going to hate you because you're the president or president-elect soon to be, hopefully, right? And you're dictating to people, no, this state needs to outlaw it, this state. He's saying, I don't want to do that. I want all 50 states to be able to determine where they stand on that. And again, because he wants the states to decide, conservatives are pissed at him, or they seem to be. Do you want federal propaganda coming from the National School Board to, all 50 states, or do you want school choice? It's pretty simple, you know? Do you want rainbow rights in all 50 states? And do all 50 states have to play along with the lunacy and take that roller coaster ride because the federal government says so? Or do you want some states to be able to say, no, we would rather focus on the traditional family unit, right? Um, do you want Obamacare or do you want private insurance or a mixture of both? These are things that a president, these are no-win situations, okay? But by giving it over to the states and letting the people of each individual state decide that, people in, South Carolina are happy, people in Florida are happy, people in Oregon are happy, people in California are happy, at least happier than they were, before all of the chaos. But we can't have it both ways. It's very important to understand that. Again, I don't want people in California telling me how to live. I'm pretty adamant about that, actually. And because I don't want them telling me how to live, I'm not going to stand up and try and tell them how to live. Let them live however they want to in California. I'm never going there, so whatever. um, but the states' rights versus federal rights will become a huge issue if Trump is elected. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you right now that's going to jump to the forefront because it's going to lead to a fracture within the United States of America. I think the fracture is already there. I think the first term that Trump served, he exposed it. It was already there. People blame him for dividing the country. Again, I think personally the division was already there. He just put a spotlight on it, okay? Second time around, we're going to see the actual fracture take place. We're going to begin to see balkanization, which just means the country begins to tribalize and split up and ultimately civil war. Um, Not to be confused with the movie that looks really good that's coming out on Friday, right? But here's the thing, honestly, even if Trump doesn't win, and again, I hope he does, but even if he doesn't win, I think states' rights um, will eventually become center stage because states' rights has to. If there's any chance whatsoever of salvaging any part of the United States, the Convention of States is basically a firewall that is in there within the Constitution. If America ever reaches the point that we're at right now and have been for some time, a convention of states in theory fixes all of that. It transfers the power back to the US citizens, not the illegals, not the corrupt congressmen and women, not the weefers that are living in Switzerland, but to the people of the United States of America. And at some point, we're going to have that convention. And I think Trump leads us in with the flag if he's elected. If not, I think he's going to start calling for it anyway, and he's going to have support from other governors who are conservatives. We have to have it. Otherwise, the Electoral College is gone. It's done and dusted. They're already calling for it once again. And eventually the First and Second Amendment and all that stuff. They're going to go in. They're going to ratify the Constitution. They're going to completely change the way this country looks, even compared to today, which is that's tough to think about. Let me know what you think in the comments. Y'all take care. God bless.